Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're working on this 6.5 horse Kohler engine. This one was dropped off by my friend Jason, who pulled it from the trash. So someone threw this away for some reason, and they actually pulled it off the piece of equipment that it was on. So yeah, I'm not sure what would be wrong with the engine, but I did pull it over and it felt like it had compression to me. So this engine should be capable of running with a bit of work. And despite the name Kohler, this is actually a Honda clone. So, the missing parts or any broken parts, they are dirt cheap and easy to get a hold of. So I think, or at least my hope is, by the end of this video, we'll get this engine up and running again. So let me get you set up a little bit better and get going on this. First things first, let's check the oil. Make sure we have some. And we are overfilled. So, yeah, either there's water in there or fuel, or maybe both. And this cap is not going back on. There we go. So let me get this elevated. We'll actually pull the drain bolt and just get all of this out of here, because this smells like old fuel mixed with a little bit of oil. Before I get the cap off again to fill it up with oil, let's just clean some of this junk off from this area. And this is just WD-40. It works great for cleaning off oily messes. So I don't know how much oil a 6.5 horse Kohler takes, but I know a Predator 212 takes half a quart, or 500 milliliters. And this engine and the Predator, they are clones of the same. So I'm going to put in 16 fluid ounces, or half a quart. And it looks like that's perfect. We are filled right to the last thread. So there's a look at the oil that came out. As you can see, it is pretty diluted with fuel. So it's a good thing we didn't try running the engine on this. It would not have liked it very much. But on the good news side, at least the oil is nice and clean. So I would say that the engine is likely healthy, and someone did change the oil, I would say, before whatever happened to this machine. So we do have fuel issues, obviously, because the carb was not holding the fuel back. And I did take a look in the tank. There is a fair amount of rust and corrosion. I wouldn't say it's a total loss, but These clone tanks, they are dirt cheap. So I would say likely we would just get a new one of these, but I don't want to get one yet, until I hear this engine run. So let's get the carburetor off. We'll get it opened up and see if we can clean it up. Actually, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Before we clean up the carb, I think it might be a good idea to pull out the spark plug and pull the engine over, because with a bad needle, the fuel would have had to pass through the cylinder and past the piston and rings to get down into the engine, and there could still be some fuel in there. So I want to get the plug out, pull the engine over, and if there is fuel in there, we need to pull it over a few times until the majority of it comes out. And the plug is wet, so there could definitely be some fuel still in there. It is a Kohler plug, so likely the original. Anyway, I'm going to make sure this spark plug boot is kind of out of the way. The ignition's also off, which you want to make sure it is, because if fuel comes flying out and this sparks, then you could burn your house down. Okay, good. So since we're here, let's check the compression real quick, and we'll also check for spark. All right, we'll open the choke. It's already full throttle. Now, this does have a decompression system, so about 50 to 60 psi is what we should see if everything is working properly. Okay, good. We are at 50 psi, so that should run the engine. Let's check for spark. Yeah, I just turned the ignition on, so keep an eye on the light when I pull the engine over. I also connected the plug so we can see if that is sparking as well. Beautiful. We got good spark, both at the plug and on the light. I'm going to reuse the plug. It actually looks to be in decent shape. I don't think this machine really had many hours on it. So I did blow it dry just to give it the best chance possible. So we'll get this resecured, and then I think it's time to get that carb off and get it cleaned up. So we'll get the choke off. Try to get the fuel line off, which it looks like it's coming quite easily. Though we do have a little bit of fuel coming out. Let me get a cup to catch that. One's stuck on there pretty good. Okay, it's moving, but it's actually taking the whole insulator with it, which isn't ideal. but it's not a big deal. And yeah, the studs are really fighting me here. Oh, I see what the problem is. The throttle plate is actually stuck. So to get this off, you actually need to pull this, and at the same time, this needs to rotate against the idle set screw, or else you can't pull it out far enough and the linkage will not release. And in this case, wow, that's going to be a challenge. Definitely not a good sign, though. There we go. So what do you think the odds are that this is going to clean up? I'd say somewhat low, although I give it hope. You know, this throttle plate was locked solid, and now it moves quite freely, and it actually doesn't look terrible. So there is a chance. Though this bolt's going to tell us a lot. Not too bad, actually. Really no varnish and no rust. And yeah, I'm not sure what to think of that. You know, that's kind of what I was seeing in the tank. It was a lot of white, I guess, powder and a bit of rust. So that will clean up to some extent, but there is corrosion there. You know, as far as the body of the carb goes, looks pretty good. The needle is not stuck, which is surprising given that it let a bunch of fuel into the engine. Guess I should have taken that off the other way. That's all right. Let's get the sediment bowl out of the way. Oh, there we go. And it's full of what looks like water. Yeah, definitely water. Again, though, the internals look pretty good. So, yeah, this carb I actually think will clean up, although the needle does not look good. And that would explain why it was leaking. If you look at it real close, you can see it is definitely damaged and distorted. So that, for sure, needs to be replaced. Let's see if we can get out the main jet, as well as the emulsion tube. And the answer would be no. So I might try a bit of heat. You know, sometimes that'll free them up. Otherwise, you know, we'll soak it in the ultrasonic and try it again. So this is the idle set screw and the pilot jet, which is in there a little bit crooked. So somebody might have been in here at some point. And we also have an adjustable needle right there, which is nice. So let's turn it in, see where it's at before we take it out. There's 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, about 3 1/4. And we should probably get this valve apart too. Just make sure it's clean. Yeah, so overall not too bad. You know, this carb, I think, absolutely will run the engine again. I think the biggest question is, you know, will this bowl clean up? And if it doesn't, actually I have plenty of parts carb, so we could steal a bowl from one of those. So let me try applying a bit of heat here, and we'll try to get this main jet out again. No, that jet is really stuck. So we'll give it an extended soak in the ultrasonic before trying that again. Pilot jet was not clogged. The main jet, though, was definitely at least partially clogged. And the float, I noticed, it's actually full of fuel. So I've got to say, I've not seen a plastic float fail before, but this one definitely doesn't float anymore. So even if it had a good needle, which it doesn't, you know, this float would have just pulled the needle open, flooding everything out. So we're going to need a new float, a new needle, probably a new bowl. And then I think this carb should run. The carb looks like new. Wow. That bowl looks like new. So it's only been 5 minutes. I guess I'll try getting that main jet out again. I think I got it. There we go. So nothing's clogged, thankfully, on the emulsion tube, but there is a bit of, I would say, gel or something kind of coating the tube. So it's a good thing that we got this out. Okay, I'll run this through another 5 minutes, then we should be good to go. I'm shocked how well this bowl cleaned up. You know, I thought for sure it was going to be a total loss, but instead, looks just about new. Definitely usable, Of course, the carb also cleaned up quite well, so I think this should run. And it's a good thing, actually, that bowl cleaned up, because I went through my parts carbs, and I have a bunch of them. Unfortunately, every single one had a bowl with some degree of rust. This was probably the best of the bunch. But thankfully, we do not need that bowl, but we do need this float, as well as the needle, which looks to be in good shape. So let's get this back together. We'll start with the emulsion tube and the main jet. So the valve went like that. We have a spring washer that goes on top. Then the cover, which I think went in that orientation. And we'll get this pilot needle back in. It was just over 3 turns out, which is a little much. You know, they might have been trying to compensate for something. So I'm going to lightly bottom it out and then back it out 2 turns as the starting point. All right, that should be good. And last but not least, the pilot jet. And make sure that goes all the way down. There are 2 O-rings on this jet, and sometimes they don't allow it to seat. And this one is not going all the way in. So I'm going to use just a little bit of WD-40 on these O-rings, and that sometimes will help it out. I think that's it. Okay, that should do it. Let's try it out. Well, this tank, it's been dripping away the whole time we're cleaning up this carb, so there is still a little bit of fuel in there apparently, and it's not in a rush to come out. So I'm thinking, you know, before we test out this carb and test the engine, you know, we should probably just unbolt the tank and set it aside. So there are 2 nuts on this side, easy enough to take out, and it looks like there is 1 Allen screw right there holding the tank in, but I don't think we can get to it because this throttle linkage is in the way. So we actually have to remove these two bolts first to just kind of move this out of the way to get the access we need. So I just scrounged around for a couple nuts that would fit these studs. So, we should be able to clamp down on this carb now. The only problem is the threads, they don't go far enough down. We could add some spacers here to get this to clamp down, but I think I have something better. Last year, I did a project on a Coleman KT196 go-kart, and that had the same type of clone engine. I thought I needed an airbox for it, so I did order one up and ended up not needing it. But this airbox should fit right onto this engine. Okay, good. Carb filled up with fuel, needle and seat, shut the flow off, so I think you know what's next. I was just double checking the throttle and noticed it wasn't actuating fully. Right now it's in wide open throttle, and when the engine starts, it should close the throttle to an idle, which actually brings up another good point. I have not set the idle set screw, so it might actually end up stalling. But the bigger issue is that this is actually not moving towards the idle set screw, or at least not completely. It's actually kind of hanging up on the spark plug wire. So this insulator, I didn't notice it before, but it's actually broken. There's supposed to be these two plastic tabs right there that the spark plug wire goes in between, and that keeps it in its place. Well, the insulator that's right there only has the tab here on the left. The one on the right, that one's broken off. So yeah, before starting it, I do need to pull this apart again, swap insulators so that this wire does not interfere with the operation of the throttle plate. Let's give this a try. The ignition's on, fuel's on, choke's on. Okay, not bad. The idle's a little bit low, so I'm going to turn the idle screw in about a turn. Give it some more fuel. And let's try to restart it. Let's choke on. Nice. All right, good. We've got a runner, and it's running pretty well. You know, both times it started first pull. There was no funny noises, no knocking, no surging. So I would say the engine is in pretty good shape. And so far we've gotten fairly lucky on this. You know, we've managed to get it running with the parts on hand, but we're at the point where we do need to place an order. And I found a tank on Amazon for $25, so I'm going to order that up. And the only other part I think we need is a breather tube to connect the valve cover over to the airbox. So I'm going to pause it for now. We'll get those parts ordered up, and when they show up, we will finish this up. A few days later, and we have a nice new black Honda Clone tank, which fits in there absolutely perfect. So to get this installed, we actually need to pull the airbox again just to get better access to secure the tank and also run the fuel line. So we'll do that now, And then we'll finish it up with a new breather tube. So in the end, this engine didn't really need a whole lot other than a carb clean, a $15 air box, and a $25 tank, which technically we could have got away with cleaning up the old one. So, why someone would pull this off of whatever piece of equipment it was on and throw it away, I am not quite sure, because this engine is a good engine. And although I don't have anything to put it on right now, I do have a few projects coming up that this might be perfect for. So until then, this is going to go on a shelf, but I expect you will see it again. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.